Hello, in this video we're looking at the endgame Marksman in Stranger of Paradise, and we're going to lean into the Marksman's agility and go about 2/3 in on break damage. There's going to be some timestamps in the description to skip to those parts in the video, and we'll look at our stats and job affinities from the world map to make sure that the Rift monsters don't influence us. Looking at our Marksman's job affinities, we'll cover them in the order displayed, even though Samurai 600% is the most important part in all of this. So we have the Assassin for the Assassin's 400% final moments, and this is a break damage buff in a separate bucket than the other break damage dealt across our gear, as long as we don't get hit. So even Nightbringer counts as getting hit. And we're going to not get hit by using the teleport command and the invisible command so that our allies get attacked and not us. And generally, we're going to try to destroy bosses before they get a chance to attack us. But if we do get hit, we have the Lionheart accessory to absorb that hit for us, and hopefully we can regroup to set up another Chaosbringer. Next, we have Assassin 800% just to stack it up and get more agility for all the extra Assassin job affinity we have. And then we have the Gun Mage 400% to help out with the break damage that we deal with our gun combo abilities. But then we also have the Gun Mage 800% just to get even more agility from that. And then next we have our Samurai 600%, where we're leaning on it for this Mind's Eye, which will critical hit every time you parry, but the way we trigger the parry is through Samurai 600%, where we do a combo ability effect, and that combo ability effect will end up triggering a parry, which triggers a crit, which allows us to take advantage of all of our agility, and the invisible command's critical hit break damage boost. And then the extra Samurai is just for agility, and then the Duelist is for the critical break damage dealt and a little bit of agility too. Next, we have our gear effects, where I am trying to stack damage dealt gun combo ability and improved effect invisible across all of my gear, as well as having agility and then covering just enough damage taken at max HP and status ailment resistance to get those two stats to 100% or negative 100%, and then also trying to sneak in during Lightbringer break damage dealt and critical break damage dealt, so that all of that comes together to help me survive a little bit when I do get hit, as well as just really pile on all of the break damage dealt and ways to increase our break damage on the Marksman side. As for my relics or my Summon's Blessing, I am using Fenrir on every single piece of gear so that I can get more agility as a result of all this Fenrir and the high percentage. The primary blessing itself, I don't actually care, also because I'm using teleport. I cannot trigger Marksman 120% or the Fenrir's dodge effect, so I'm not even benefiting from that, but I still get all of the agility from the high percentage. Next, we have our command abilities. I'm using Barrage to take advantage of all of our agility, and as our agility gets higher than the enemy's agility, we get even more extra hits, which results in more break damage. And then we have the Invisible command to hopefully avoid getting targeted, as well as getting the boost for critical hits. Then we have Teleport in order to avoid unblockable attacks and deal with enemy attacks deplete buffs trials so that we can get out of our way and line up a clean shot. And then we have Chaosbringer so that we don't have to worry about any of our MP for any of the abilities, as well as dramatically boost our break damage dealt in a separate bucket from all of our gear passives. Next, we have our second job, which is going to be Monk, or Master that allows us to charge up our attacks up to 4 stages, and that 4th stage is going to be a lot of extra break damage dealt. For the Job Affinities, we have Void Knight 120% in order to increase our MP limit boost rate when we Soul Burst the enemy so that we get more max MP for our next Chaosbringer. And then we have the Summoner 120% so that we can chain cancel our way at the beginning of a rift and get more max MP that way. But then we also have Summoner 600% to double the effect of the Leviathan primary blessing that helps with the Soul Burst MP recovery. And then we have Breaker 120% for the increased Soul Burst MP recovery. And then just as a side effect, I happen to have Breaker 400% as a buff whenever I Soul Burst an enemy that helps break the enemy a little bit faster next time. And then just for giggles, I have Dragoon 400% to increase my speed while I'm on the monk doing monk business. And then I have Red Mage 250% so that I can charge up the monk's focus a little bit faster. And then just every once in a while, I might chain cancel out of focus, and I have Samurai 250% so that when I do chain cancel, I get a large boost to my damage or break damage for a few seconds. And then I also have the Gambler 120% so that when I do chain cancel, I restore some MP based on my luck, and that might help in co-op, world map, or also in an untimed rift where I can take my time and try to get a longer Chaosbringer going. And then I have Cyclic Warrior 250% just as an emergency to get some max MP back. And then I also have the Lionheart accessory to cover me in case I do get hit. Next, we have our gear effects where we are stacking Improved Effect Chaosbringer and Focus so that we get even more break damage from those two abilities. And I have Lightbringer duration so that my Chaosbringer lasts even longer, and Soul Burst MP recovery so that when I do Soul Burst the enemy, I get a lot more max MP back. I meant to have Status Ailment Resistance stacked up to 100%, but I do need to tweak my gear to make sure that that is in effect so that I don't get silenced, paralyzed, or petrified when I'm on Monk. I also have Luck here and Buff Duration. The Luck is to help out with the Gambler 120% MP recovery when I chain cancel. This is in the world map or on a slow rift. And then the buff duration is a convenience so that I don't have to reapply a buff too often. As for our master points, on the Marksman, we are stacked up with Agility, Marksman Job Affinity, Ability Break Damage Dealt, Critical Break Damage Dealt, and then trying to find the highest damage dealt or break damage dealt we can take advantage of. And in this case, it was Parry Damage Dealt, since Samurai 600% will be triggering that. And then on our Monk, I have a preference for Luck in order to help with Gambler 120%. I have damage taken at max HP in case I am hit on the Monk, and I might survive. And then I have Lightbringer duration stacked up. Ideally, I'd have a lot more Soul Burst MP recovery, but I don't have it this round. I also have increased MP limit boost rate, which is really important for that Soul Burst. And then I have buff duration just for convenience. If you're using NPCs, we're going to use them like stat sticks, where Jed is going to be on Assassin for now, and we're using Liberator 600% on both NPCs so that we get 12% of their stats as long as the NPC is alive. And now we're going to try to squeeze a lot of agility out of Jed. So we're going to stack Assassin on every single piece of gear. I messed up because my chest piece doesn't have Assassin, but oh well, does well for another build. So Assassin 800%, bringing out even more agility. Samurai or Ninja 800% and any extra job affinity, bringing out the second most amount of agility. And then, for survival purposes, we have Lionheart for the invincible effect, where if I press my direction pad left or right, or D-pad left or right, Jed or the NPCs, they're going to be invincible as long as Resonance or their Lightbringer lasts, which is why I'm stacking Lightbringer duration across all of my gear. And then at that point, I stack 2 different stats. In this case, agility is on every single piece of gear, and then it might be a second stat depending on the build I'm going for. I also have Fenrir as much as I could across the gear pieces, but if I couldn't get Fenrir, then Shiva, Sylph, Carbuncle, and Odin are also fine, as they provide the second most amount of agility from the summoned blessings or the relics. And then I do the same for Sophia, where I set her to Dragoon just because the Dragoon gets more agility than Breaker or her other jobs. In the Rift, the monsters that I'm using at the moment are the Goblin for the agility, the Wolf also for the agility and the break damage dealt, the Curl because I'm still working on the monster quests, so monster quest efficiency, the Cactar just because I'm getting some stats out of Assassin and a little bit from Ninja, and then I have the Behemoth where I am getting that combo ability stat bonus ideally, but worst case, I at least have the damage dealt to bosses, which also is break damage dealt to a boss. As for the gameplay loop, I will start off on Monk, and if I have time, I will chain cancel my way up to max MP, and then use a Chaosbringer, then teleport, then I will charge my focus all the way up to the 4th stage, switch over to Marksman, that has the improved effect Invisible stacked up, use Invisible, and then switch over back to Monk, refresh Invisible, because it refreshes the stronger Invisible, but it gives it the buff duration that I stacked up on the Monk. And then at that point, I apply Barrage. If I can, I will chain cancel one more time just to get the Samurai 250% effect going, and then I'll do direction pad left and right so that my allies are invincible, switch back to Marksman, take aim, and then usually if I want the boss to die, I'll make sure I'm on the second slot for the aiming and then just start spamming that. For gun combo ability choices, ideally you'd want a stat bonus agility gun combo ability like aim or chain shot or phantom shot, but I personally like using Dead or Alive so that I don't have to go up and soul burst normal enemies, and then also using the dazing bullet, or in this case polluted bullet, so that if the enemy does do an unblockable attack, I interrupt them and I can just spam that until they're dead. This is a clip where I fight against a wave of enemies, and I'll alternate between my aiming 1 that has Dead or Alive and my aiming 2 that has whatever ability I want to use to try to break the enemy but not destroy them, because I do want to soul burst just enough enemies to get my max MP back, and then I don't feel like soul bursting them, so I try to use Dead or Alive to finish them off instead, because Dead or Alive will soul burst them once they're broken.